And for those of you who've been crying on the internet about Starfield and raving about it, I hope that what you saw today makes you happy, because to me, I've never really been interested in Starfield to begin with. I'm still not really interested in Starfield. To me, this is Bethesda's No Man's Sky. It's really hard for me to say, go and get a console for Starfield, when all we know is what they're showing to us, and it could be also similar to a No Man's Sky situation. I was never sold on No Man's Sky by any means, and everyone around me was talking about how great it was going to be and how amazing it looked, which it looked terrible graphically. It's not a very graphical, impressive game. And I said, look, all that stuff is too good to be true. Don't believe it. And what happened? We all know what happened with No Man's Sky. To me, this is Bethesda's No Man's Sky.
A 7-year-old version of No Man's Sky before any fixes or patches avoided these constant load screens and lack of free exploration on a planet.
Here's the biggest fundamental problem. See this vast map of stars? It feels extremely small when each of its hundreds of explorable planets is separated by little more than a loading screen. It didn't take long for me to realize that takeoff and landing animations are barely interactive cutscenes.
Exploring is complicated. Unfortunately, it's a bit too weird for my liking. Too many hang-ups. There are a lot of cool planets and big cities and some towns, but there are also a bunch of randomly generated planets. Now, Bethesda was upfront about this. They set expectations about how they were randomly generated and how it works, but it doesn't feel quite right. So exploration itself is a lot of loading screens and menus.
Simply put, it's an illusion of scale and freedom. For everyone that thought that Todd's promise of 1,000 planets to freely explore sounded too good to be true, you were painfully right to be skeptical.
View of a new planet from my ship in low orbit. However, the sense of discovery is dulled when I'm often landing on these barren surfaces on these planets only to find the same mining facility or research laboratory I found halfway across the galaxy on another planet.
It's also worth noting that the worlds you explore are generally visually different with varying gravity, but they're barren and lifeless aside from the crafted areas you visit in quests. I mean, yeah, you'd expect that from planets that are mostly untouched by intelligent beings, but that doesn't make them a lot more fun to run around.
With all of these solid elements, you have to wonder if Bethesda bit off a bit more than they could chew. Were they too ambitious? Well, unfortunately, I feel they were. The more I played Starfield, the more I saw behind the curtain and realized that much of the scope and scale of this game is nothing more than an illusion.
Look at the planet with your scanner, and then you can see everywhere you can really land, or really what the planet has to offer. Then you click on that, and then a loading screen, and then you're landing.
The next nuisance that irritated me no matter where I roamed is the fact that there are no actual maps, mini or otherwise. This screen is just not helpful at all. I spent way too much time searching for basic things like vendors to sell my loot to while I tried to memorize the layout of multiple settlements.
It has a lot of flaws, and in some places doesn't quite hit the heights I was hoping it would. If you were hoping Bethesda would make an epic game that would feel nothing like what they've done in the past and be completely glitch-free and change the world, well, then you might be a bit disappointed. It doesn't look very nice, it has weird NPCs, it does have bugs, and the space exploration isn't as endless and as cool as some were hoping.
Are there bugs? Of course there are. I've seen a fair amount of model and texture pop-in, occasional crashes, performance slowdowns, mostly during autosaves, wonky waypoints, clipping issues, wrong camera angles during conversations, the works.
It's less and less magical the more you engage with it, since there are many problems that grow tiring the more you play. All of this is compounded with bugs and broken quests that are mostly concentrated in the late hours of the game.
Weird, silly, buggy things that'll happen in the game. Like I'll walk into my ship and see a crewmate hovering 2 feet above the ground, or clipping through a kitchen table. Now, during a conversation with an NPC, another character will walk into frame and the camera will wig out as they clip through them and do something funny. People will disappear in a blink. Like, if you've seen it in a previous game of theirs, you might see it here. Now, you might not see it as much, like as often, but that goofiness is still there.
Major faction questline is so broken in my first save file, I straight up can't complete the faction questline on that save. I ran into this with the Crimson Fleet faction questline, one of the biggest questlines in the game, and frankly one that I think is way better than the main story. However, in my first save file, I just can't complete this quest. He glitched outside of the space station and I can't get him to come back inside.
Starfield follows a very familiar formula without meaningfully engaging with its setting or the gameplay systems therein. It's ultimately a journey that's a mile wide, but an inch deep. I can't help but feel that Starfield banked on the intrigue of space exploration and the vastness of the cosmos and forgot to create much of an identity beyond that. Despite the limitless possibilities the final frontier offers, Starfield's version of humanity remains largely homogeneous. Starfield tries to instill personality into its story, but consistently weak writing and generic dialogue means that these characters, who do have some interesting moments along the way, largely fall flat.
For me personally, I actually just wasn't into the game for the first few hours though. It takes a while to get its hooks into you. The opening mission is a bit bland, you don't really get that wow moment, and the first city you visit, while being really big and grand, felt a bit boring and weirdly dull.
Starfield's playtime is roughly 30% inventory management, and yet it's shockingly bad at that task. You'll constantly need to transfer loot between your inventory and your companions or to and from your ship's cargo hold. But maddeningly, you can't view both at the same time like you can in Fallout 4 and Skyrim.
There are near constant load screens, though to be fair, they are pretty short so long as you're playing the game on a platform where it's loaded onto an SSD. Oftentimes, the game feels as though it's been built with technology that's significantly behind what contemporary peers are able to pull off. The best example are these load screens, requiring the player to sit through one every time they travel between buildings, small zones within cities themselves, similar to the gated design of Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 3, which bear in mind are games that are over a decade old, and the same structure and style of area design is the same here as it was 10 years ago. There's also load screens every time you enter your ship, when you take off, when you travel from orbit to another star system, going from that star system down to the planet's surface, getting out of your ship down onto the planet's surface, and then from the planet's surface into a building.
It's never a great sign when somebody recommends a game on the grounds that it gets good after more than a dozen hours.
Considering the main quest, if you just sprint and do nothing else, can be completed in around 15 to 18 hours.
There are a lot of forces working against it, and the combination of its disjointed space travel, non-existent maps, aggravating inventory management, and slow rollout of essential abilities very nearly did it in. It was the joys of piloting a custom spaceship into and out of all sorts of morally ambiguous situations in a rich sci-fi universe that eventually pulled it out of a nosedive. Like Skyrim and Fallout 4 before it, there's still an immense amount of quality role-playing quests and interesting NPCs out there waiting to be stumbled across.
It relies on a tried and true, but very well-tread formula, and is missing the depth of the games that came before it. Starfield is more concerned with quantity over quality and leaves that experience at the surface level.
Holy shit.
I've told y'all. Since day one, I have told y'all. And what do we get for this, most anticipated game, this massive release of a game? What do we get? Y'all need to start demanding more from these developers and these companies for the games that you're paying your money to. Okay? You need to stop being okay with mediocrity. You need to stop being okay with Bethesda using a dated engine and dated technology to continue to make games the same way that it was made 10 plus years ago. Okay? You need to stop buying this bullshit. Stop dick riding Bethesda. Stop acting like Bethesda is the greatest developer of all time, because it's not. Okay? And if you want to keep spending your money on shit like this, we're going to keep getting shit like this. Petition for Todd Howard to resign. Petition for Phil Spencer to resign, because we all know about the bullshit that's going on with Xbox and their exclusives and their games and everything else that they have going on with, not being able to compete with the other consoles. Just stop. You want to continue to play games like this and have all these bugs and glitches and performance issues and lack of interesting story? By all means, that's your money, go ahead. But just stop. Stop dick riding Bethesda and demand that they do better for your money.